Welcome and hello to the Rotary Times Show, a public service program presented by Rotary District 7610. On our programs, we speak with Rotarians and community leaders to discuss how Rotary International builds partnerships to support local, national, and world communities. I am your host, PDG Pat Borowski, from the Rotary Club of Bailey's Crossroads, Virginia. The success of a Rotary Club is dependent upon the club president. They lead, inspire, motivate, and connect their clubs with their community and others locally and around the world. Joining me remotely is a Rotarian, Melanie Ochs, who is the current president of the Rotary Club of King George-Dhalgren for the year 2022-2023. Welcome, President Melanie. How are you today?
Honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well,
great. How are you?
Thank you for being on the Rotary Times today with us. Well, as we do with all of our guests, we start out with a little bit of biographical background that you'll share with us about you. So tell us a little bit about who Melanie is.
Oh, sure. I've been a King George resident for about going on 4 years. And previously I was living in Alexandria. I have two daughters who is in school ages, a dog, a cat, a husband, and in our spare time we like to be creative, play guitar, and fish.
And fish. We do too, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. So how did you what is your Rotary story? How did you get to Rotary, and how did you decide to stay in Rotary and become president of a club?
Well, honestly, if I had to recall, I've always been involved in some form of volunteer work throughout my entire life, at least as far as I can remember. But it was when I moved here to King George that another Rotarian reached out to me and thought I'd be a good fit. I just recently moved, looking to know people in the area, and it just seemed like a natural way to do it. And I did have similar philosophies to what Rotary has, but I never really knew Rotary before that Rotarian approached me.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. And how did you go through that process? What impressed you that you said, you know, I'm going to stick with this?
I would say it's a mixture of the mindset of being local as well as being global. Right? We're a local community, and it's a small community here in King George, which is about an hour or so south of the Washington, D.C. metro area. But it does have a lot of ties to a lot of international components here, too, because it is a transient area similar to Washington, D.C. And so what I've come to find out is just the heart of the local membership really does try to give back to the local community in certain ways, but Rotary and Rotary International in general have that global aspect of it of being basically a good human, doing well and doing things that are mutually beneficial. And really the four-way test really kind of speaks for itself on what Rotary is and who the people are.
Well, Melanie, another thing that we'd like to hear about is, what is your club like? What's your composite, and particularly the community that you serve?
That's a great question, Pat. So the club is made up of a lot of folks that are between the ages of 40 and up. And we're looking to hopefully expand that. A lot of them have to do with previously having military experience, being where we live. So you have folks from walks of life that were previously Marines, to naval officers, to those that are in engineering, as well, that are in, real estate and finance and such. But who we serve, much of the time, We deal a lot with children and education and things as regards to children welfare. That's really been one of the core tenets of King George. And some of the things that we are active is giving to certain organizations through our fundraising, such as the local YMCA, such as Love Thy Neighbor Food Pantry, such as buying coats for kids throughout those that need it in the King George County school system, and many other organizations near and dear to our hearts here.
Sure. And that's great. And how, in that context, how has both your club and your community changed given the pandemic and now that we're moving out from that as well?
Now, it's changed immensely in the way that we've been able to meet. Having to do things by Zoom or a form of web conference has been crucial in just keeping the Rotary alive, at least in our small part of the world. And then in regards to making sure that we can still facilitate that need through and out of COVID, we do try to keep in contact with a lot of the certain figureheads that are important to us, such as certain folks within the King George County School District, such as the food bank, and such as Brisbane Center, and making sure that if there's ways that we can help, that we try to do so within our means.
Right, and you were speaking a little bit about the child programs and all. What are some of, if you could give us two of the leading challenges in your community?
I would say if there was a challenge in our community, it's the economic disparity between the haves and have-nots, because you have a lot of folks that are here that come from outside, right, and that are attached to the local naval base, whether it be through engineering or directly through the military. And so with that then comes a different type of economy that goes with that. But then on the other hand, those that are not necessarily part of that sort of industry come to find themselves on really being just more of having either hard to find work or having more just smaller businesses along the way. So we do have a little bit of that, of the tales of two cities, of the haves and have-nots, from my humble opinion.
Right. Right, and we see that a lot in the communities where communities may be affected because they used to sustain and support people working in the community, and now as it evolves and all of a sudden your community becomes a bedroom community to larger, out of the area work areas, the people left in the community that don't have access or involvement in that, to your point, the naval base or difficulty in terms of finding really quality employment. And so food insecurity, I would assume, is also a big issue for your community, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. But I do think that a lot of that is changing in terms of I know that there's been a lot of, from what I've understood, there's been a lot of new development within our county.
Yes.
To bringing additional businesses and to provide some form of diversification of businesses within the King George County.
Right.
So I think there's a lot more to come from our area.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the 2020 census predicts for our entire district, stem to stern, that we will continue to have economic development. And as you point out, then that begins to support a community within itself as well. So talk about, let's hear about one of your favorite leading projects that you get involved in and how that serves the community, how your members are involved, what's involved with that. Give us a little snapshot of that.
Sure. If I had to pick a favorite, I would definitely, that Rotary itself does. Now I would say that it would have to be the Flags for Heroes event that we do. It's just such a feel-good community event. And what I love about it is the fact that there will be people driving by as we're installing the flags, and strangers that will just be driving up to help, just to help out for the 15 minutes to help us install the rest of the flags. And just the amount of positive reviews and energy that we receive from the community for just putting up those 150 flags in one part of our King George community has been just truly heartwarming. In addition, there was a time that we would do this in conjunction with something called the Fraser Mason Ride, which was in honor of two local heroes who passed away in line of duty while abroad in Afghanistan. And there would be motorcycles that would ride by the flags, and we would try to make sure that we would coordinate in honor of those who have served. And the beautiful thing about the Flags for Heroes is that it doesn't necessarily have to be about those who have served in the armed forces.
Right.
During 2020, we kept on pursuing with Flags for Heroes, and also made sure that we gave thanks to those that were in the front line. So I recall me presenting a flag to a Food Lion cashier, and them being extremely heartfelt, having heartfelt thanks, and that they had some form of honor in what they were doing is purposeful, because every person has something that's purposeful, and big or small, it doesn't matter. We're all part of this together.
Well, that's a great place to take our break. We will take a short break and be right back and speak more with President Melanie. Please stay with us.
We are this close.
We're this close.
We are this close
Of wanting
to making history.
This close to changing the world.
We are this close.
This close.
This close to making sure no child suffers a crippling disease.
Ever again. This close.
We are this close to ending polio.
Ending polio.
All we need is you.
this close.
If we don't act now, we may lose this chance forever. Help Rotary make history at endpolionow.org.
Welcome back to the Rotary Times. We are here speaking with Rotarian Melanie Ochs, the president of the Rotary Club of King George-Dhalgren, Virginia, for the Rotary year 2022-2023. Well, one of the things I wanted you to talk about about your club and your activities is your international projects. So tell us about that.
Thank you so much, Pat. And I'll have to say, one of the things that I was very heartfelt, I had some heartfelt thanks from our local Rotary, was when I had the opportunity to help a friend in Ukraine last year.
Oh, wow.
And a friend of mine was living in Ukraine for the past 5 years as an international teacher.
Oh.
Had to evacuate with her and her 3 kids as a single parent. And so I received the support from our local Rotary Club for me to go and meet her abroad, to provide her some supplies that were needed. And so it's just so nice for how even our small Rotary Club here can provide, those well wishes and support that way. And then we were approached by another Rotary Club in the district to help with some funding towards well and water improvement in the country of Haiti. And so we are in the stages of conferment on that at this point in time, to see if that's something that we can accommodate.
Yeah, and that's great, and thank you for your service to Ukraine. Obviously, that is something that is very close to my heart, as we have family. So thank you very much for what you did. One of the other things, we talked a little bit about this, but how have you seen your members change going through the pandemic and then coming out the other side? What is kind of the additional, I don't know, I want to say maybe beneficial perspectives they now bring to being Rotarians and doing good in the world?
I think those that want to do good in the world really make it a part of their own core tenet and the pillar of who they are. And I noticed that those who've invested the time in Rotary or invested the time in something that's really important to them, they come out stronger on the other side and even more, I shouldn't say necessarily aggressive, but just more hungry to serve because of the need and because of what we all had to endure during COVID and afterwards.
Sure.
And this new era of normal that we're living in.
Well, we talked a little bit about your moving forward and stepping forward for leadership, and I'd like you to share kind of that perspective and speak to other Rotarians, like, and thank you for stepping forward. What would you tell other Rotarians that are considering this?
I would tell other Rotarians who are either in consideration of this, who's considering on their own, or who has been considered by another Rotarian, to take that leap of faith. And I will tell you, you're not going to get all things right, and that's okay. I don't think perfection is required to be a Rotarian leader, but only to be able to make that effort. And I was very honest with my club that I will make mistakes along the way. I will not get things right,
Sure.
Nor do I have 40 hours to spend on Rotary every week on certain programs and events. However, I will do the best within the capacity that I have to serve, and just being forthright about that. Really does make sure that the expectations are in place of what type of leader you want to be and you plan to be. And usually I find that clubs are very grateful for that, and knowing what the expectations are then for that year.
Yeah.
So do it, and just set the expectations of what that leadership looks like for you and for your club.
Right, and that's such an excellent point, Melody. Sometimes I tell people that being the leader sometimes is just opening the door for everybody else.
Yes.
And I think that point, to be clear and develop a camaraderie and group development so that it's not tag your president and then everybody runs away.
That's not it.
Right, exactly. So how has your family, how have they been supportive of your involvement in Rotary, and do they get involved in any of your service projects and everything?
Yes, and so one last thing, if you don't mind me adding on
Sure.
to the leadership item real quick
Oh,
before
absolutely.
The other thing to just remember, and this is me learning from my mistakes, is you don't have to wear all the hats in Rotary.
Right.
You can remember that you can delegate and you can have your friends help along the way. Those other Rotarians, they just need someone to guide them on the help. So don't be afraid to share that help.
That's excellent. Yes.
Yeah. And so speaking of help and now going into family, right? My kids really do enjoy participating in Rotary. In fact, I was trying to find the picture. With one of the Flags for Hero events, we dressed up as a family in different Halloween costumes because it was around Halloween that we did it that year. And my husband dressed up as Wolverine. I dressed up as a Marvel character, and my children dressed up as, an astronaut and Harry Potter.
Oh,
And we just made fun. We made fun and with it, and enjoyed ourselves with it. So I think for my children, the volunteerism that I've been doing has kind of seeped into who they are. Where now my one daughter has her own Potomac Club, where she and her friends get together and clean up the river once a month.
oh,
And
wow.
and that's what they like to do.
Oh.
Granted, I go out afterwards and buy them treats or a donut,
Yeah,
but
right.
it gives them something to look forward to, and then they know that they're doing good.
Well, your little example here harkens back to what you said in the very beginning. I mean, you came from a family that had a culture of service, and you're continuing that, and as an example for your children, and your children are taking that up as well. I think that's always so critically important. I want to say, you were talking about your fundraiser. Could you give us a little information on what kind of fundraiser the club does? I know clubs are always interested in what other clubs do to raise money for their different projects.
Yes, and I would say there's two fundraisers that we do. The one is the Great Wine Out. It used to be a Great Night Out, which was much more of a big production with dueling pianos and auctions, and it was such a lovely event. But because of COVID-19 and because of certain restrictions from that, we really did needed to scale down the event, or scale back the event. And so we've spun that out to being a Great Wine Out with one of the local wineries here in King George, and promoting their wines, but also then making sure that we're having certain games